The following podcast is being brought to you by the Defy Life Podcast Network.
Welcome to Aftergate, powered by the Defy Life Network.
Are y'all ready?
Aftergate is a podcast series highlighting Colgate alumni of color in their professional endeavors aftergate.
Are y'all ready?
Aftergate is hosted by Alvin Glimpf, aka Al, and Herman Dubois, aka Jerry.
Are y'all ready?
We are doing Aftergate because Colgate University has produced innovators who have changed the world every day, yet many alumni of color and the mainstream Colgate community are unaware of the amazing accomplishments of alums of color.
Are y'all ready?
Welcome. This is another episode of Aftergate, Season 2, and it has been phenomenal so far. Trust me, it is going to get so better this season. But trust me on that.
Tell them about it.
Nah, just trust me on that. It's about to get crazy. And we might get into it. We'll see if the spirit hits us, right? That's how we do with this show. We allow the spirit to guide us. And so far it has guided us on the right path. Before I get too preachy, let me bring my co-host. What's up, Mr. Herman Dubois? How you doing, my brother?
All is well on this beautiful evening. And just to piggyback on your commentary that the energy and the vibe that we let the podcast flow with, I have to acknowledge and give credit where credit is due. That lately I've been coming up across the word sankofen a lot in different writings and different readings and in different posts that I'm seeing, and it's like crazy. And so, um, in reading the literature that it accompanies, whether it's in the spiritual realm or secular realm, it has all been a tribute to, returning to our roots. And when I think of my roots, I think of my ancestors. I think of those who came before me and created opportunities that maybe at the time that I was taking advantage of didn't realize how big of an opportunity or what it took to get that opportunity. But I'm realizing that through this podcast, we are being given so many opportunities to return to the source and fetch it. Going back to Dr. Eleni Tella and the Sankofa way that we were participants in as young interns and mentees, getting warriors ready for the world. And so that's been on my heart to say for a while, because Dr. Tedla was incredibly inspirational for my development and success, both at Colgate and now post Colgate 30 years. And so, um, the fact that you acknowledge that we flow with spirit, and we just flow with the vibe, to me, that's all saying the same thing. We allow our ancestors, we allow our roots to come forward and just kind of like, govern this. And we're just along for the ride, being blessed.
Hotep, my brother. Shout out to Dena Laney Tedler, her husband, Dean Boyd. May they be safe, blessed, and continuing to change lives, because the people that they took under their wing, working in and out of that cultural center, literally, I can speak for myself, changed my trajectory as a scholar, as a person of color, just as a citizen, as a person who is looking at themselves as a contributor in this world, and also to bring a spirit of coalition. You know what I mean? It's like that was how we left that space. She taught us that lesson of that you'll get more accomplished by building bridges than building walls, right?
Yeah, strength in numbers.
Amen. So shout out to them and much love to them, because this is a guest from a younger demographic, right? So we might get some new listeners. She might be exposing the Aftergate podcast to a broader network of alumni of color. So for those who are listening for the first time or second time, let me remind you that Aftergate is a podcast that is all about lifting up the stories of alumni of color from Colgate University. And we do that by having some relaxed, fun conversations as if we were sitting around a kitchen table, meeting or catching up with our brothers and sisters. So that's what this is all about. And we are looking forward to our guest tonight. Are you ready to introduce and bring this lady in? Is it about that time?
Absolutely. Come on now. Let's bring the queen on.
Let's bring it in. Let's bring it in. So may we officially invite Miss Dena Robinson. Class of
Yes.
2012.
That's what I'm talking about, though. That's what I'm talking about. Engagement, baby. Engagement.
Yes.
Yes.
Welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, yes, yes. And in our tradition of how do we cross paths, if we cross paths with this guest. And to my knowledge, our interaction for the most part is that we both serve on the alumni council. And
That's right.
that has been an introduction to you as we both give back in that way on the alumni council, and looking forward to continuing to build, not just through Aftergate, but also in that manner as well. So great to have you here.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here and be in conversation with y'all.
Okay. So class of 2012 means you graduated from high school in 2008. So set the stage for us. 2008 was an amazing year as I think about what was so significant about 2008. We got our first Black president in 2008.
Yes.
So give us a sense of what is going on in the world, what's going on in your world, what's high school like, where you grew up. Give us a sense of what that context is like as you're entering Colgate.
Yeah, sure. So I'll start out by sharing that I'm a first generation American on my mother's side. My mom's Jamaican. My dad's side of the family's from Barbados. I also identify as Black, Jewish, and as queer. And 2008 for me was the year when I came to understand the fullness of all of the identities that I hold and my lived experiences. I'm originally from New York. I was born in Brooklyn, and we moved out of the city when I was around 6 or 7 years old to the Hudson Valley region. And I went to high school and middle school in Newburgh, New York, which is about an hour and a half north of New York City. And I didn't know anything about Colgate when I applied, had never heard of it, didn't know anyone who went there. I actually received a flyer in the mail, took it to my guidance counselor, did some research, and I was like, oh, this seems like an okay school, but I had my heart set on going to a large school, you know.
What was your dream school? What was your dream school?
Honestly, my dream school was Berkeley, but my mom talked me out of going to California.
Okay.
She was like, what if you go to California and something bad happens to you? How am I going to get there? She's also deathly afraid of flying. So that's the context for that. That was my dream school. Never saw myself going to a school as small as Colgate. And I went to visit with my parents, and I was like, this seems really nice. It seems like I'll get some individual interaction with professors here. I can be, a big fish in a small pond. And I decided to go. Came in, I did the pre-orientation for the radio station. I actually had a radio show while I was at Colgate.
WRCU in the building.
Fellow DJs.
Yes, I loved it. That was my pre-orientation experience at Colgate. And, my freshman year, everything was fine until Obama became the president. And then people really just started popping off on campus. And that ended up being, oh, go ahead.
No, you go.
I was just going to say that ended up being a really pivotal experience for me in terms of my formation and identity at Colgate as a student organizer and activist, because I was so angry by what was happening on campus, and I know this is true when y'all went to Colgate. Colgate is majority white. It's a PWI. And it was majority white when I was a freshman. And I was used to being around white people and in white settings because of my experience in high school, but not to the same extent as Colgate. So it felt like culture shock for me seeing kids driving around in like Mercedes and BMWs and saying that they were broke when they had like $500 in their bank account. It just didn't make sense to me. And so the racial incidents that started happening after Obama became president, which was a time that was so exciting for me. That was the first election I ever voted in. And, watching my dad say, yeah, like he never thought that he would see a Black president in his lifetime. And then we did, and it was such a huge win. And I was feeling so much hope and optimism. And then racist incidents started happening on campus. And the administration at the time essentially tried to brush what was happening under the rug. And the Black students on campus, we only found out what had happened. Someone had sprayed racist graffiti in one of the academic buildings in a bathroom. And we found out because one Black student went in the bathroom, saw it, took a picture, and then the picture spread like wildfire across campus. And I just remember the president gathered the students in the chapel for a talk. And I was so angry listening to what she was saying at the time, where she was like, oh, we just need to make sure that we can have peace as a campus. And I don't want racial tensions flared and stoked. And she's going on and on and on. No plan for how she's going to remedy this beyond, cleaning the walls of the bathroom so that students don't have to see that language anymore. And I went to the dean of students the next day and was like, you need to find a way to get me off this campus or else I'm going to burn this campus to the ground. That's how angry I felt. And I'm not even an angry person. I'm not an angry person. And I'm lucky that, now that conversation could have gone pretty poorly, right?
Right.
But she was like, let me bring you to the Alana Cultural Center. Let me bring you to the Women's Studies Center so you can meet other students who feel the same way that you do about changing Colgate. And that changed everything for me because I found community there at Alana, community in the Women's Studies Center, eventually the Harlem Renaissance Center, that helped me to stay and actually survive Colgate. And I hate that, we had all of these racial incidents in 2008 on our campus, but I'm grateful for it because I think if that had not happened, I don't know that I would have become the person that I am today, because that moment turned me into an organizer, and I learned that one way to channel my anger and the pain that I was feeling was into fighting and changing Colgate. If not for me, then for all of the Black students that would come after.
Fascinating. So this is happening your first semester, freshman year, or so right after. Where are you living then? Like, what dorm did you live your freshman year?
I lived in Gatehouse.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I lived in Gatehouse, which apparently Colgate has been saying since I was a first year that they were going to get rid of it because it's temporary housing, but it's still standing as far as I know. And I lived with my roommate, who's still one of my closest friends from Colgate, who our freshman year at the time had been identifying as lesbian, and then later transitioned while we were on campus from female to male. And that was the other part of my freshman experience. So there was a lot of homophobia on Colgate's campus, I would say, throughout my entire tenure there. But our freshman year, I will never forget this. Our freshman year, someone spray painted on the wall of Gatehouse next to our room the F word, like the FAGGOT word. And my roommate and I, and at this point in time, I hadn't yet started identifying as queer. And I didn't even realize I was queer. I didn't know what that meant. And I remember I came out into the hallway. I saw the word spray painted on the wall. And my roommate and I, we just washed the walls down, and we just kept wiping them down. And people came out from their dorm rooms to help us, but we never reported that incident as a bias-related incident. Wow. We didn't know who we could report it to. And that changed some of my perception of Colgate as well. And definitely, at least my first year of college, got me into a place of like pretty deep shame, you know, to the point where I was like, I don't know if I can be around like LGBTQ people because then I'm going to be targeted with these bias incidents, you know. So that was one of the other hard parts of our first year at Colgate. It was just the confluence of the race and sexual orientation. It was just too much. And so with everything going on outside of me internally, I just felt like I was brewing basically all of my first year at Colgate. Yeah, wow. A lot of internal turmoil.
So this is all just freshman year when we were asking about the context of what was happening in your world and in your life. So an amazing, I have to say, probably one of the most just tumultuous roller coaster type freshman year with all types of crossings in your life and discoveries in your life and reality checks in your life. That's applaud for surviving freshman year.
Yes.
Thank you.
And one thing I want to say that, you know, I've heard it so many times with so many of these conversations, but for some reason I heard it loudest in your testimony, in that we all reference surviving Colgate, right? And then out of the survival, becoming the activist, becoming the student leader, learning how to organize, developing skills that transfer into the real world in other areas of our professional and personal life. But I begin to realize that it wasn't about us surviving. It was about us being the value add to what Colgate is not doing to create an experience for all students, not just students of color, but to embrace what diversity truly is and the beauty in it, rather than react to situations that happen sometimes because of the very ignorance of folks and just their lack of being schooled. But oftentimes that responsibility falls on the students to create those learning experiences when it should be the university's responsibility to do so. I heard that loud and clear through you right now. So thank you for that mind shift, because we need to start looking as a value add to the university, despite the fact that we were surviving the university.
The value add is something that we've been cognizant of, to the point that it becomes a burden for many of us by the time we graduate. Like, we understand the value that we bring to the university, and it wears on you. By the time you're a senior, some of us are like, I can't do this no more.
I'm done.
Sometimes by you a sophomore, or even junior year, like, I can't do this no more, because it's a path that other students don't have to walk.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's funny to hear that in surviving Colgate, we've had people share testimonies that was the reason, the main reason why they went abroad, right, was to get away from campus, and then have the mind shift of what traveling internationally was like, changing everything about their existence and coming back to Colgate with a whole nother spin on life. But the fact that the premise of it came from needing to leave campus because it was so stressful and so much unhealthy for them, they were forced to like, well, let me just go somewhere, and then boom, you know. So yeah.
I know a lot of students who did that. I did that, you know, and that's real.
Did you study abroad?
Colgate can be a hard place. I went on one of those, what was it called? It was one of those shorter experiences.
Like January.
Denmark.
Oh, Denmark.
Yeah, I went to Denmark, and it changed my entire worldview.
Awesome.
Can I ask what
I reflect on even now?
Why Denmark? What was happening there? What was that trip about?
I was in a gender and economics course taught by Ula Grippard, and she was one of the professors in the Women's Study Center in the economics department. And I took the class, and then she said, "This is tied to a trip to Denmark." I was like, "Great, sign me up, let's go." And I went, and it was, I mean, oh God, it was fantastic. Now, Denmark's very white, right? You know, it's a very homogenous country. But being there taught me that this country doesn't need to operate the way that it actually does. You know, Denmark provides for its citizens. There are social safety nets. There is, you know, like 6 months of maternity leave. There's paternity leave policies. There's 4-day work weeks at some places. And it shifted how I thought about time. It shifted how I thought about what equitable workplaces even look like. I wouldn't necessarily live there myself, you know, because Denmark also has a lot of issues with xenophobia, strong anti-immigrant sentiments there. And they were really strong when I went because of everything that was happening in France with the burqa ban. But yeah, I thought it was an eye-opening experience. It was nice to have a break away from Colgate, but I was there with people from Colgate that I actually liked. And there were a lot of other students of color who went to Denmark on that same trip, and we had a great time. We had a ball.
Nice.
So I love to hear, when you look at your 4 years, what do you characterize as some of your accomplishments? What are some of the things that you're extremely proud of? Some of your highlights? You mentioned learning to be an activist. So I'm curious to hear that side of the story.
Yeah, when I look back on my time at Colgate, I would say one of the largest accomplishments I had was pushing Colgate to completely reform their sexual harassment and sexual assault policies. I would say that I would now describe myself as an institutional organizer. And I really feel like I cut my teeth at Colgate doing that, because Colgate in 2008 and 2009 was, I mean, their policies around anything related to sexual assault and sexual harassment were a mess. They were like incredibly gendered. They were ineffective. I would even argue that they were illegal at the time, according to, you know, the guidance from the Department of Justice around Title IX. And so I started engaging in advocacy and organizing around that effort. I was organizing with a group of students that I met in the Women's Study Center who were also trying to overturn Colgate's sexual assault and sexual harassment policies. And those students at the time were seniors. And so when they graduated, they kind of passed the baton off to me, and I just took it and ran with it. And so I ended up working with the president at the time and the deans of the college to help them with changing the policies. We led marches, we had protests, we brought in outside consultants. We were doing a lot, threatening the university at times with like lawsuits and stuff that we probably weren't going to do, but you know, it worked.
Leverage.
And I learned, yeah, it works.
Nobody wants a lawsuit.
You know?
Nobody wants a
Nobody
lawsuit.
wants a lawsuit. And yeah, it just taught me how to be in community with institutional decision makers who are pretty far removed sometimes from the actual lived experience of students. And that led to a lot of changes at Colgate. We would do trainings around bystander intervention in the fraternities and sororities. I became a student sexual harassment advisor, which was an interesting hat to wear because I was also a res life advisor, where I was a mandated reporter, but as a student sexual harassment advisor, I maintained confidentiality. So it also gave me experience in wearing multiple hats, I guess. So I would say that was one of my biggest accomplishments. And then another accomplishment I felt I had that I don't always note is serving as the residential life advisor at the Harlem Renaissance Center.
Hey.
Because I know for me, as a freshman, HRC played such an instrumental role in me staying at Colgate, in having a sense of community with other Black folks at Colgate. And so when I was able to become the RA at HRC, I jumped at the opportunity. And, you know, knowing that HRC, I believe, doesn't currently exist at all, let alone the form that it did when I was a student, it was nice for me to be able to build community with the folks who lived in that building and give them some of what I had that kept me going as a freshman, because it was a lot of fun. And being the RA for HRC did not feel like work ever. So many of the residents were also my friends, you know, and it was just a great place to live. Like, most of my fond memories from Colgate come from either Alana, HRC, or the Women's Studies Center. And so it was just an honor to be able to work there in that way.
Same here. So many fond memories were spent in the lounges of HRC. So we're gonna take a quick pause as we give some shouts to our sponsor, and then we will come back and complete this conversation with the pioneer, activist, institutional change agent, Dena Robinson.
So this episode is sponsored by Hope Murals. Hope Murals is a nonprofit that provides adolescent youth with an interactive experience of creative expression via an urban arts platform that stimulates both mental and physical development. Please visit their website at www.hopemurals.org to learn more and find ways you can support the work they do.
Welcome back. It is the second half of our show. Before we jump in, I would like to thank our sponsor, Hope Murals. Thank you for what you are doing up and down the East Coast. And man, I'm gonna just throw it out there. I can see Hope Murals just like doing work now. I was gonna say the West Coast, but I'm gonna think bigger than that. I see international on their horizon. So I'm just throwing it out there. I've been known to be a seer before. So
Well, I'm gonna raise you a seer and call you a prophet.
Okay.
Because officially on the radar for 2022 is Montego Bay.
See, look at that. Oh, I got it. I got the gift, and I got to use it. So keep doing what you're doing here, Hope Murals. Keep doing what you're doing. We love what you're doing, helping our youth, making them better people as you expose them to these urban arts. Also want to make sure we give opportunities if there are people out there who want to also be a sponsor. Make sure you check us out. Hit us up, aftergatepodcast@gmail.com. As always, want to show some love to our network, the Defy Life Network, doing big things. Check them out at www.godefylife.com. Some really interesting and empowering, relevant written content. If you are not defying life, what is your world about, right? If you're interested in more dope podcasts like that, like this, not just Aftergate, check out their podcast hub at defylifepods.com. And always remember, we are on all of your favorite streaming services. Check us out. So on that note, I'm gonna pass it to my co-host so he can lead us back into the second half of this conversation.
As we return to the Aftergate dialogue, I would be remiss if I did not, pause for a moment and just say, what the hell is going on with Brother Smith? And we know we're talking about Will Smith, the Will Smith. And so, and the incident with Chris Rock at the Oscars, everyone knows it was, some people initially thought it was part of the production, then realized when the network went mute that we wasn't supposed to hear some of that. And clearly then, within minutes, it was on TMZ and viral across the country. So I'm not big into pop culture and not really following a whole lot, but I definitely would be interested in getting your take on sort of the impact of that incident from the actual entertainment industry and the fact that the Oscars was produced for the first time by an African American. And so They were really trying to push diversity with this particular production. To what does it say about where we at, in terms of a community?
Oh, I have so many thoughts. The first thing I would say is that I hope people who listen to this are able to hold the nuance of this situation. And I'll admit, I watched the video, and when Will Smith slapped Chris Rock, at first I was like, you know what? He deserved that because Jada has an autoimmune condition, alopecia, right, which she's talked about publicly. Um, I assume that Chris Rock, like me, reads the news and sees these stories come up, especially about other celebrities. And he made the joke anyway. And when I first heard the joke, um, I immediately thought, out of all the people in the room that he could have targeted with a joke, why this Black woman? Why her? And she was sitting right there, which made me kind of wonder if the Oscars knew that the joke was going to happen and positioned Jada and Will in a place where, they could quickly pan to them to show their reaction. And when I saw Will get up, I did see, the part of the video where he looked like he laughed, and then got up and smacked Chris Rock. And the more that I thought about it, I was like, you know what? I can actually see myself in all three of these people. I have also been the person at certain points in my life where I said something that didn't land with someone right. I never got slapped across the face, but I have been called
She
in lovingly
she
by people or called
she
out,
ducked. She
you
ducked.
know. So that part of me, resonates with Chris Rock. And then I've also been like Will Smith, where I have felt so triggered or angered by something that I'm not going to say lose control, but that my reaction doesn't always necessarily fit what happened. There's like a misalignment between what I'm responding to and what I'm feeling. So I've been there. And then I've also been like Jada, where someone has said something in my presence that I find so offensive that I either laugh because I don't have a better response in the moment, or I don't say anything, or someone else says something in my defense, or someone doesn't say anything in my defense. And so when I was able to think about it from multiple different angles, it helped me to take a step back and have a different perspective. And I know that a lot of people are, saying that what Will Smith did overshadowed the Oscar that he received, which I think is true. And I think it's actually a shame because now when people think about Will Smith, they're not going to think about the fact that he won the Oscar. They're not going to think about Venus and Serena. They're going to think about the slap, and that's it. And I think that we do people a disservice when we minimize them to this single thing that they've done. He's more than who he was on the stage when he slapped Chris Rock, but that's what people are going to remember him for. And I also think, I don't know, all the people who are like, oh, this is going to reflect badly on Black people. I'm just like, first of all, the Oscars, that's a white institution, okay? There's it's not like it's a room full of other Black folks, which is why, that's also why I was upset about what Chris Rock said, because I'm like, you did this for laughs in front of white people? Seriously? Like, you couldn't pick on a white person? There were like thousands of them in the crowd, not like there were that many Black people. So it's a white institution, and it is an institution that actually has condoned violence, even though they say that they don't, because they have had several men who in the past have committed sexual violence and have been known perpetrators, and they receive Oscars. The Oscars aren't drawing up these disciplinary investigations into them. Maybe they didn't go and slap somebody, but they still did something violent. So I'm thinking about that as well. And I guess what I've been seeing culturally is I feel like everyone has a hot take on what happened, and some people's takes aren't actually that hot,
Ooh.
because they are. like some of them are limited in their thinking. But I do think that it's opening up an important conversation about Black men and mental health and
Mm.
wellness, because what I saw when Will Smith went off like that was that he felt triggered. And I've read a bit about his experience. And, he said he grew up seeing his dad slap his mom around. And so when I saw his reaction, I was like, I think that his inner child is reacting to what he's seeing, and he had an inner child response. And it's not always easy to do what people are saying he should have done, which is take the step back, take a breath, calm down your nervous system, and then respond. I don't think that's easy. I don't even think it's easy for people who've been going to therapy for several years. It's just not an easy thing to do in general. And I just hope, I don't know, I hope that he doesn't get his Oscar taken away, honestly, even though they might do it. Because at the end of the day, I feel like if Will Smith were a white man, they would not be coming down on him this hard. Yeah, just a lot of different
Okay.
opinions,
Yeah.
but I do hope that people, think about all the angles.
Appreciate that.
Gr-
That very nuanced answer. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So what we would like to hear now is, who are you now and how did you get to be the person you are now? Walk us through that journey after you left Colgate. How did you get to be the person you
Mm-hmm.
are today?
Well, who I am now is I am a trial attorney in the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division. I work in the employment litigation section, where we enforce Title VII against the employment discrimination statute against state and local governments. And when I'm not doing that, I am also a diversity, equity, and inclusion facilitator. I run a consultancy with another Black woman called Radical Roots, where we push institutions and organizations and the people who work within them to adopt anti-racist mindsets so that they can achieve racially equitable outcomes. And the journey for me getting there has been interesting. It's been a fun ride so far. When I was in my senior year at Colgate, I thought that I wanted to do multiple things. I was like, maybe I'll go pursue a PhD in sociology. Maybe I'll go to law school. At one point, I wanted to go to medical school. And I ended up stumbling into an informational session being run by Teach for America. And much like learning about Colgate, didn't know anything about Teach for America, had never had a Teach for America teacher when I was in school. Went to the informational session, and I honestly just went to the informational session for the free food because, when you're a senior at Colgate, sometimes you don't have a meal plan. I was hungry, so I went to the informational session.
Hashtag
And
food matters.
yes, food matters. And I was hungry, and you're trying to get all the free food that you can as a senior. So I think it was a good thing that I went, because that ended up changing my trajectory in a lot of ways. I ended up applying for Teach for America, interviewed, got in, and was placed in Baltimore, which is where I live now. I'd never been here before. I hadn't passed through here, didn't know anybody here. And I moved down after graduating to teach English to speakers of other languages. So I taught immigrant and refugee students. Totally wanted to stay in the classroom for more than 2 years because, the flack that TFA teachers get is that they're kind of like a revolving door, in and out of the classroom. And I ended up exiting the students in my ESOL program out at my second year. And then the district was like, if no other students come into this part of Baltimore, we're going to shut down the ESOL program at your school. And I had embedded myself very deeply into my placement school and wasn't really interested in doing that elsewhere because I loved my school and my students. And I took that as a sign at what was I then, 24 years old, with my underdeveloped, not yet adult brain, that it was time for me to go to law school. That's just the sign that I took it as. I was like, all right, I'm going to go to law school. So I started law school in New York City at the Cardozo School of Law, and had a blast, but ended up transferring out and coming back to Maryland. And during law school, I focused a lot on the intersection of race, education, and poverty. And so that led me to interning at Lambda Legal in New York City, working on the intersection of the school to prison pipeline and LGBTQ youth. Then I interned in Baltimore at Project Heal, which is Maryland's only medical legal partnership, where I was doing work helping to represent students with disabilities who were being pushed out of their schools or who needed additional support. Interviewed at the Southern Poverty Law Center in Mississippi, which was an interesting experience for someone who had never been that far south. And I loved it and had a blast doing prison conditions work. And I was also active in my law school and moot court competitions, and running various student organizations. After law school, I clerked for a judge in Maryland on our Court of Special Appeals, a Black judge, which was an incredible experience. And for anyone listening, clerk for a Black judge. I know that you're not necessarily supposed to say that, but it makes a difference. I think it made a difference for me. And then I did a fellowship, an appellate litigation fellowship with the Public Justice Center here in Baltimore, practicing civil rights and poverty law. And then that led me to the DOJ. And it's interesting looking back on my trajectory now, because I can see how everything ties together, you know, but in the moment, going through it, I was like, what the hell am I doing? What am I doing? I don't see where I'm going. Sometimes I didn't see how I got to where I was. And I felt like I was having all of these experiences that were so random and disconnected, but they all fit.
With that being said, if you had to reflect on the journey you've had post Colgate, the journey you had at Colgate, and you could give a 17, 18-year-old version of Deborah, of Dana, advice on how to go into Colgate as a 17, 18-year-old, and then what would be that advice to the 21-year-old leaving Colgate, going into the world? If looking back now, what would be the gems you would drop on those two young ladies?
Oh, goodness. The first thing I would say is something that hopefully future Justice Jackson said at her confirmation hearing, which is persevere. I would tell myself that at all stages of my life, you know, the Dena who was at Colgate, the Dena who went to law school, because there were times at Colgate where I did not, especially my first year, I did not know if I was going to make it. I didn't even know if I was going to make it through my first year at Colgate. And I would love to go back and say to myself, it is all going to work out and it's going to be okay. You know, and some of the times where it feels like the world is getting ready to open up and swallow you, it's going to be okay. And you're going to make it through this. I would also tell myself to stay whole. One of my favorite quotes is from Audre Lorde, and she talks about, you know, staying whole. And there are different iterations of the quote that are about staying whole and letting people choke, you know, and I think that at a school like Colgate, and I felt this way in law school as well, you're sometimes made to feel like you're not enough and that you don't deserve to be there, or that you need to break yourself into these little tiny pieces for respectability or for assimilation purposes. And I would tell myself that it's okay to stay whole and to, as Audre Lorde would put it, define myself for myself instead of internalizing the ways that other people would define me. And I think that that is true for students of color, especially who are in majority white institutions, whether that's a school or a workplace, you know, because you walk into a room and people are already throwing identities onto you that you may or may not hold. And I think it's okay to shake that off and just be who you are at your most authentic and deep level. And so I would tell myself that too. And finally, I would tell myself to continue embracing community and to know that the way, and I feel this way about most things, like liberation is in community. We can get free together, not necessarily alone. And so I would give myself that reminder for all stages of my life as well.
That's what's up. That's what's up. That's what's up. Kuji Jakalia, self-determination, determine your own identity, my sister. If now that you think about, you've talked about your journey and who you are as a civil rights attorney, is there anything you wish you would have participated in, learned more of, done more of while you were at Colgate?
Is there anything I wish I had done more of? Yes, actually, there is one thing that I wish I had done when I was at Colgate. I dabbled in rowing for a while when I was in middle school and high school. And I actually wanted to walk on to Colgate's rowing team. And I walked up to the practice session and looked in the room and saw nothing but white people, well, white women specifically. And it made me feel the way that I did in high school, because in high school I was the only Black person on the team. And it made me feel that way, but 100 times worse. And I looked in, I saw all of these people. I automatically made assumptions about them and where they were from and their backgrounds. And I just decided this is not a space for me. And I walked away. And that's something that I regret when I think about it now. And, in reflecting on that experience, one of the things I promised myself when I went to law school was that I was never again going to walk away from an opportunity or count myself out of something because of the people that were well represented. And that changed everything in law school for me, because when I went onto the moot court team, me and 3 other Black people tried out for the moot court team at the same time. And we were all friends. And I was like, they're not going to take all of us, right? They're probably only going to take one of us. They took all 3 of us, and at certain points in time, we had conversations and we were like, oh, the moot court team is all white. We don't know if we're going to get on. And I said, you know what? I'm going to apply anyway, and I'm going to see what happens. And that's what I've done every single time since. So I learned my lesson, and that's all you can do, right? Is make mistakes and learn from them. And then the only other thing that I wish I'd done was continue playing in Colgate's orchestra. I was trained as a violinist from elementary school through high school. And I was in Colgate's orchestra my first year of college at Colgate. Wow. But then I dropped it when I was like, this is not my full-time job. I'm a student first. And I wanted to lean heavily into student activism. And so I felt like being a student activist didn't align with playing the violin in Colgate's orchestra because it was so time consuming. And so I dropped it. And it was actually something that I really loved. And I stopped doing it to pursue the activism. And so I wish that I'd held on to that part of me.
Awesome. Do you play it? Do you play it all now? Have you picked it up just to hit a few strings?
No, and no. I keep saying I'm going to get back into it. Like, I have my violin sitting up on my bookshelf right now, and I keep saying I'm going to do it, but I need to set the time aside to actually commit to practicing.
We know a few people. You know what I'm saying? We can make that happen. Back at the chapel. And just set you up, and all in front of the student. Come on now.
We know a few people, but what I don't know is a violinist. So
right.
I encourage you to get back in, because I would love to broaden my network and say, I know a violinist.
Right.
I might have to really go do it now. I'm gonna do it. I am holding myself accountable publicly. I'm gonna do it.
All right. You heard it first on this Aftergate podcast, season 2. So let me ask you this. Is there anything that you would like to promote and get out there to our network, to our community that's listening? Any initiative, any website, your company, you're a consultant, what would you like to promote? Because here's an opportunity to leverage all of our listeners. That's what this is all about.
One thing I'd like to promote is the Colgate Alumni Council. I encourage current students who are listening and also alumni of color who are listening to read about the Alumni Council, approach any of the members of the Alumni Council, because we really want to build relationships with current students, and we want to encourage alumni to take part in giving back to Colgate. And I know from knowing several other alumni of color that we sometimes do feel disconnected from Colgate, and I get it, because in a lot of ways, Colgate has not loved us back, and so I encourage you all to get involved, to learn about the Alumni Council's initiatives, to learn about the Third Century Plan at Colgate. There are a lot of exciting things that are happening. And for the current students who are listening, I would just say, reach out to the alumni of color. Please see us as a source of support. We want to be here for you. We want to be connected to you. We want to know what we can do to help you. If there are campaigns happening on campus, organizing efforts that we could bolster, let us know. Shoot, let me know. I'll bolster. I'll go on the alumni of color group and say whatever I need to say on your behalf, but please reach out to us, because I have a lot of experiences as a student at Colgate where alumni of color didn't want to come back or weren't interested in talking about their experiences, and things are really starting to change at Colgate. And I know that it doesn't feel that way, but you are at a different Colgate than the three of us certainly were. And it's getting better bit by bit, but I think together and in community, we can make it even stronger.
Absolutely. Awesome.
That's what's up. You've been awesome. This has been another episode of Aftergate Season 2. Thank you to our guests. Thank you to our listeners. As always, Aftergate is powered by the Defy Life Network. Make sure you check us out on future shows on all your favorite streaming platforms. We have many, many, many more dope episodes and dope guests to follow. Peace, family.
Peace.
Shh. You hear that? Listen closer. That, my friend, is the deafening sound of focus. It drowns out all the useless noise that can clutter the moment. Naysayers don't exist. Haters? Smaters? The peanut gallery? Who's that? When you in your zone, all that noise and all that buzz is just elevator music. So, enjoy your journey, focus on your goal, and bask in the quiet roar that is progress. Because when it's your time to shoot that shot, spit that verse, or close that deal, the only voice that matters is yours. Defy Life.